Welcome to our 2024 presidential election coverage. Tonight we are on the another step of the presidential campaign season. Let's check out who the candidates left are. As you can see, there are only 3 Democratic candidates left standing. Jon Ossoff is currently the front runner with most delegates. Kamala Harris has the second most delegates, and Elizabeth Warren has the third most delegates. Warren is really in pretty far behind the other 2 candidates, so she's really hoping for some big wins to bolster her campaign support. Meanwhile, the Republicans only have 2 candidates left: Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Vice President Nikki Haley. And here is the current primary map. As you can see, Jon Ossoff has a significant lead over Kamala Harris. Though keep in mind that Pete Buttigieg and Andrew Yang have both endorsed Ossoff, and if you consider the delegates going to Ossoff, he actually has another about 280 delegate boost, bringing his number up to around 700. Though also Kamala Harris has an endorsement from Roy Cooper, meaning that her delegate count is actually around where Ossoff's is right now. And for the Republicans, Nikki Haley has a very narrow lead over Ron DeSantis. The other 2 candidates that have delegates, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, haven't actually made any endorsements yet and are expected to in the coming weeks. And we have our mini Super Tuesday or Super Tuesday Part 2 poll closings, as you can see, from states like Idaho, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, and Washington. So going into expectations for the Democratic candidates, Jon Ossoff needs to get some pretty solid wins out of states such as Washington, Missouri, and Michigan. Kamala Harris needs to win at least Michigan, Missouri, and Mississippi, and Elizabeth Warren needs to win at least another one of those big swing states because she is very far behind. And we have a projection to make. Jon Ossoff will win the Idaho Democratic primary. He actually will narrowly edge out Elizabeth Warren, and it is quite a narrow margin here. And on the Republican side, Ron DeSantis will win the Idaho Republican primary. In Michigan, Jon Ossoff will take this state the plurality, at least, of the 125 delegates up for grabs right now. This is a big win for Ossoff. As mentioned before, it was one of the key swing states in these poll closings, so Jon Ossoff really needed this state to win. And this is a big blow to Kamala Harris's and Elizabeth Warren's campaigns. And Michigan on the GOP side will give its delegates to Ron DeSantis. This is a big win for him and a big loss for Nikki Haley. Meanwhile, Mississippi is pretty narrow here, but Kamala Harris will edge out Jon Ossoff. And Nikki Haley will also win this state, another narrow race, as she's narrowly edging out Ron DeSantis. And in Missouri, Jon Ossoff will take this key state, 68 delegates. And Nikki Haley will also win this, and it's a very key race here. Nikki Haley will win this primary. And Elizabeth Warren will win the North Dakota primary. This is actually a difference from Idaho, another rural state. Elizabeth Warren will win this primary. Ron DeSantis will win the North Dakota primary on the GOP side. And Elizabeth Warren will also win Washington. This is a pretty big win for her, one of the larger states up for grabs tonight. And Nikki Haley will also win Washington on the GOP side. Here's the current primary map. Jon Ossoff has expanded his lead over Kamala Harris. He has about 100 delegates currently. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Warren did manage to win North Dakota and Washington, but overall has done little to bolster her chances. As you can see, she's at least 100 delegates behind Kamala Harris and 200 behind Jon Ossoff. She really needs to pick up the pace in her campaign. And for the Republican Party, Nikki Haley still holds the lead over Ron DeSantis, albeit far smaller lead than the Democrats have between Jon Ossoff and Kamala Harris. And we have our poll closings out of Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands. Pretty small, but they do have delegates, and of course that is essential for any campaign. We can project that Guam will give its 7 delegates to Kamala Harris, or at least the majority of them. And Ron DeSantis will win this state on the GOP side. It is pretty close, but the military base here actually has bolstered Ron DeSantis' chances. And the Northern Mariana Islands will give its delegates to Kamala Harris. These are both pretty small wins for Harris, so they don't mean much. And Nikki Haley will win the state's primary on the GOP side, 9 delegates. As you can see on the primary map, only Guam and Northern Mariana Islands have changed, and really Kamala Harris has boosted her numbers just a tiny bit, but not by a lot. And on the GOP side, again, nothing much has changed. Now a 47 delegate gap between Haley and DeSantis. And as you can see, we have a very a small amount of poll closings but large amount of delegates. Arizona, Illinois, and Florida. 3 key states in the presidential election. Illinois is safe blue, but Arizona and Florida are swing states, and Donald Trump won 2 out of 3 of these states, and in the primary they have a lot of delegates. This is very important. If Jon Ossoff wins all 3, he's essentially presumptive nominee. If Elizabeth Warren wins at least 1, her campaign is back in, and if Kamala Harris wins 2, it's essentially a dead heat between her and Ossoff. We can project that Arizona will give it the majority of its delegates to Kamala Harris, a big win for Harris. She has a decent amount of regional appeal and an endorsement from Kyrsten Sinema, one of the senators. Jon Ossoff was really hoping to win this, and this actually makes it so Jon Ossoff, if he won all 3 of these states, he essentially would have been the presumptive nominee, but now he won't be because Harris has won Arizona. Meanwhile, Nikki Haley won this state on the GOP side. Ron DeSantis campaigned here pretty hard, but in the end, it was not enough for him to win it. And Florida will give its delegates to Jon Ossoff, a massive win, 219 delegates. Ossoff will win at least 100 of them, and that is definitely what he needed. Despite losing Arizona, Jon Ossoff has made up for it in a massive win out of Florida. Meanwhile, this is Ron DeSantis' home state, so it's no surprise that he destroys Nikki Haley, getting over 60% of the vote. Even though Marco Rubio actually endorsed Nikki Haley, this was not nearly enough to lessen DeSantis' margin. And out of Illinois, it's a big win for Jon Ossoff, showing that he has a working class support alongside minority and suburban appeal. Jon Ossoff will win this state with 155 delegates, definitely a necessary win for Ossoff. And Nikki Haley will win this state on the GOP side. Ron DeSantis was hoping to win after he campaigned here quite a bit, but in the end, it was not enough for him. And here is the primary map. Jon Ossoff is right below 800 delegates. Kamala Harris actually is 200 behind him. Elizabeth Warren is at a mere 400. Definitely behind these candidates. 200 behind Harris and 300 behind Ossoff. Almost 400. And on the GOP primary map, it is still super close. 21 delegates separating the 2 candidates overall. And Elizabeth Warren has suspended her 2024 run after very, very lackluster support. What came as a surprise is that Warren endorsed Jon Ossoff over Kamala Harris. And this is essentially because after Democrats put up 2 very moderate candidates in the past election cycles who have lost, Democrats seem to have an appetite for at least a progressive, and Jon Ossoff has put himself as a more liberal candidate compared to Kamala Harris, and the fact that he can still appeal to the suburbs, which are more moderate, is very, very good for him, showing that he has a lot of appeal and could potentially win a presidential election. So Warren is endorsing Ossoff, and that means that her delegates will actually be with Ossoff. And as you can see, if you include all of the endorsements, Jon Ossoff and Kamala Harris, Jon Ossoff has 1,520 delegates, about 400 under what Ossoff needs to win. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, is at a statistical disadvantage as she only has 794, 1,000 under the number needed to win. And we were poll closings from America Samoa. And Nikki Haley will easily win this primary, not much of a surprise here, and of course only on the GOP side, by the way. The Democrats do not have a primary here. They already did it. And we were poll closings from Wisconsin, a key state overall. If Ossoff wins this, it shows that he can appeal to blue-collar workers, and with his wins in places like Michigan and Illinois, it looks like he does have that, but he needs to cement his support amongst those blue-collar voters that are banned in Democratic Party for Donald Trump. And we can project that Jon Ossoff will win this primary as expected, 84 delegates, a decently large win, and showing that Kamala Harris is really at a massive disadvantage in this race. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis will win this primary. No big surprise, he was endorsed by Ron Johnson, and actually while the former Governor Scott Walker endorsed Nikki Haley, DeSantis will still win the state. As you can see on the primary map, Jon Ossoff has gained a decent amount of delegates. He's now 1,565, and meanwhile Kamala Harris at 823. And on this primary map for the Republican Party, it is a mere 20 delegate difference between DeSantis and Haley. And for poll closings out of Alaska, a pretty small state, but we'll see who will win this, as there are a decent amount of Native Americans, and a lot of the rural voters here are pretty Democratic, so we'll show who really has support amongst those groups. And Jon Ossoff will win Alaska. It has 15 delegates, pretty small, but in the end, Ossoff will beat out Kamala Harris. And Ron DeSantis will win this state on the Republican side. he actually gained quite a bit of voters, including some libertarians who voted for Ted Cruz against Donald Trump in 2016. And we were polling out of Wyoming. Let's see who will win the state with major projection. Jon Ossoff will easily win the state after an endorsement from Elizabeth Warren. A lot of the rural voters are shifting to Ossoff. And Ron DeSantis will win the state on the GOP side. And we will poll closing out of Ohio. This is a big state, and whoever will win it definitely has an advantage. If Harris wins it, she is basically not back in the race, but she still has more of a chance. If Ossoff wins it, Kamala Harris's campaign is over. So a massive, major projection to make. Let's see what it is, who will be the Democratic nominee and who will be the GOP nominee. If Nikki Haley wins the state, she definitely has a decent chance, but Ron DeSantis also definitely has a shot at this, so we'll see. Jon Ossoff will win the Ohio Democratic primary, not 14 delegates. We apologize for that. It is a significantly larger margin than that. Ossoff will win, cementing his place as a Democratic frontrunner, if not the presumptive nominee. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis will win this primary. This is definitely a win he needed overall, but yeah, he will win in the end, beating out Nikki Haley. And here's our primary map. Jon Ossoff has 1,658 delegates. He's a mere 300 away from what he needs to win. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is only 1,000 away from what she needs to win. It's essentially statistically impossible for Harris to win, so we have a few major projections after the GOP primary map. As you can see, Ron DeSantis is now at a pretty big disadvantage. He's gone down to 130 delegates behind Nikki Haley, and this is actually including the endorsements made. So Marco Rubio endorsed Nikki Haley despite being from the same state as Ron DeSantis, and Ted Cruz endorsed Ron DeSantis, not Nikki Haley overall. So as you can see, Ron DeSantis is now at a pretty big disadvantage compared to Nikki Haley, and it's going to be a really tough primary fight unless DeSantis or Haley drops out. Kamala Harris has announced that she will end her 2024 presidential campaign. This was actually pretty much expected, as Jon Ossoff has such a large lead and is leading in all the other states that it seems impossible that Harris could win. She has pledged to campaign for Ossoff as much as possible, and some have suspected that she could be the eventual vice presidential nominee, similar to 2020. Ron DeSantis has suspended his 2024 campaign. This is actually a pretty big surprise. After he won Ohio and was only 100 delegates behind Haley, he actually had a meeting with some key GOP leaders, such as Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, the current House Minority Leader, McCarthy, whose first name I did forget. Anyway, with all these GOP leaders, they essentially, what is believed, that they urged Ron DeSantis to drop out of the race in the name of party unity, as this would have been a long, drawn-out primary fight that would have hurt both candidates if they were to win the nomination. It honestly could have led to a deadlock convention, and that means that DeSantis is now dropping out. He's actually declined to be vice presidential nominee, as many have actually floated that idea, as he wants to return to Florida and remain governor. And we can project that Jon Ossoff will be the Democratic nominee for 2024. As we mentioned earlier, Kamala Harris dropped out, meaning that he is now the presumptive nominee, and will be officially nominated in the Democratic convention, which will be held in Miami, Florida. And Florida was a state that shifted to the right, which actually, so that means that the Democratic convention has a lot of political reasons behind it. Democrats want to appeal to more of the Miami voters, so Ossoff will be there for his convention. Meanwhile, Nikki Haley is the Republican nominee after DeSantis dropped out. She will have her convention held in Milwaukee, actually, in Wisconsin, a state that GOP won in 2020, but really need to hang on to, so she will be having her convention there for the GOP. And everyone, you have now the right to make a choice for the VP of both candidates. You can choose a running mate in a Google form, that'll be in a pinned comment in the comment section down below, so make sure to do that. So please choose a serious candidate for this, don't do some random person. There'll also be another option, and I will accept serious responses, not some, it has to be an actual nominee, someone that could legitimately be the running mate for either Nikki Haley or Jon Ossoff. I have a decent amount of candidates, but I didn't name as many of those. I definitely forgot a few, so if you have any good suggestions, put them in there. It'll probably be the majority candidate, but if there are several really good options, I might choose those instead, but hopefully you guys will decide. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and leave a comment in the comment section down below. Tell me what you thought. Subscribe for more content like this and hit the notification bell. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you all next time.